All right, we're live.
Okay, here we go.
All right, so we don't know what we're doing here. This is very informal. My name is Corbin Healy,
I'm Sam Huckabee.
and we're talking about science behind largemouth bass fishing. So, I guess for some context, a little bit about who we are. We are both from Kansas City, Missouri. We've known each other since first grade, at
Yep.
least. And have been avid bass anglers for probably the past 15 years or so. I remember really getting into it when I was in middle school and kind of going from there. We are both professionals, I guess. I'm an
Yep.
attorney, Sam's a dentist, and so we are constricted to, uh, you know, um, we're not pro fishermen by any means, but we do have a lot of time on the water, both regionally and around the country. And so the thought was to uh, spend some time researching about what we do and to try to take a more scientific approach towards what we do. Sam and I noticed that so much of the fishing industry is plagued and consumed by really good marketing and advertising,
So much.
which is what I mean, I'm certainly a sucker for it, as I think we all are. But in all of the years that we've spent and all the time that we spent fishing, I a lot of times don't know the why behind a lot of the things we do,
Yeah.
and so we are trying to record a number of episodes that are dedicated to better understanding the fish and better understanding how to be
Yeah.
better anglers.
The why.
The why,
Like why are we doing so and so things? What's the research that backs it? Is there research that backs it?
right?
Because I feel like a lot of these things that we're going to look at and dive into, even a little bit today, like the research is not there yet on a lot of these things. And they're being sold like there is a ton of research backing them. And that's what the media portrays. And that's what all the large corporations are trying to portray
For
so
sure,
that you buy and buy and buy and try new things and
for
all these
sure.
different things. So,
Well, so the first topic that we are going to dive into, and I don't know how long these episodes are going to be, but the first thing we wanted to get into was vision.
yeah.
Um, and more particularly, I think we kind of divided the workload. So I spent a lot of time on largemouth bass perception of color and their interest to particular colors. Whereas I think Sam, you spent, correct me if I'm wrong, more time on like distance,
Yeah.
sight, and the depth of water, how that impacts visibility and hunting patterns. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very much so. I mean, and there's just so many other things that go into this, like clarity of the water, sunlight, like all these different things. Tried to, research as best we could with what's out there and what's available. And just to see, how different circumstances or different days on the water with in terms of sunlight or what water body you're on and how clear the water is, to know what you should be throwing or why you should be throwing certain types of things.
Sure. So before we dive into color, I guess there's a little bit of just to context wise. Like I said, we're both from Kansas City, so a lot of our fishing is going to be around the Midwest. A lot of our experience in that, what has taught us to become the anglers that we are, has been influenced by the fact that we are from the Midwest. So um, we're obviously fishing lots of local lakes around the Kansas City area, but the bigger, more well-known lakes that we fish are going to be your Ozarks, Table Rock, Truman, and then we've also spent a decent amount of time traveling to different lakes around Texas, um, hunting for largemouth, and then also going up north for smallmouth, and for also even walleye, pike,
Yeah.
muskie, and so on.
Yeah.
And so that influences, I guess, a little bit about what our confidence is in now, and that might sway us in how we research particular things.
Sure,
Just
sure.
FYI.
It's impossible to take out the bias, fully behind everything, but that's I think what Corbin and I are really kind of good at with the professions that we're in is really looking at research and being able to decide, was it well done? Are the methods to these research, projects done well? And if, everything we bring you, we will try to do it with as least amount of bias as we can and lead you to good research.
Sure. So let's start off with color, which is what I research. All right.
Yep.
So if you're anything like me, my jig box is composed of 15 different colors, 15 different variations of colors. Now they're going to be, a green kind of base, a brown kind of base, a black kind of base, and so on, but different variations of that. Same with my crankbait box, same with my swim jig box, chatterbait box. I've got all of these different colors and slight variations of colors for what I think I am fine tuning in the moment. Come to find out, I think a lot of that is nonsensical.
Yep.
So it all kind of started, my understanding of this is that there was a study that was conducted in 1937 by a guy named Frank A. Brown Jr. And he wrote for the Illinois National Historical Survey a article or research article called Responses of the Largemouth Black Bass to Colors. And in that study, he placed small, some type of device, electrode or something on largemouth bass that would actually shock them
Okay.
based off of their response to given colors, their pursuit of different colors. Well, that was in 1937.
Yeah.
So in 2018, the Department of Animal Biology and School of Integrative Biology at the University of Illinois conducted a color that was very, very similar to Brown's study, and their study was called Seeing Red, Color Vision in Largemouth Bass.
Yeah.
And I have to give credit to other people that I've used to research this, particularly some YouTube channels, Tom Reddington's channel, Steve Rogers Outdoors, Wendell Fishing, and One Cast Fishing. They had videos that interpreted these studies that helped me kind of better understand what was going on. So let's talk about the goals of the study to begin with. Okay, so there were two primary goals of this 2018 study. The first was to characterize the visual system of largemouth bass and determine whether or not the visual systems differentiated in largemouth bass between different strains.
Okay.
So for the study, they used a strain of Illinois largemouth
Yeah.
and a Florida strain of
Okay.
largemouth. Okay, so
Common.
that was the first goal. The second goal was to determine which colors bass could discriminate and whether this matched the predictions from a model that was created using their estimates of bass photoreceptors and spectral sensitivities. Okay,
Okay.
so let's talk a little bit about how they did this. So they took 100 juvenile largemouth bass and they obtained them from a local hatchery and they kept them in a naturally lit greenhouse. Okay. They were trained once a day for 69 days. Okay. And they were trained to discern their target from all other targets presented simultaneously. So, for example, bass were trained to approach red, had to discern red from blue, from black, from green, from white, and from chartreuse yellow. Those are the colors that they used: red, blue, black, green, white, and chartreuse.
And they would want them to go to the red every
Well,
time,
not
or
necessarily. So
okay.
what they would do is they would differentiate the tank based off of which color they were trying to train bass to pursue. So
Okay.
there was a
Okay.
red tank, a
Okay.
blue tank, a green tank. Each tank had a different goal target color.
Okay.
And these target colors were essentially acrylic panels.
Okay.
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 And what they would do is there were pipettes that were connected to the colored panels that would release food. And that is
Okay.
how they would
Okay.
incentivize
Right.
the fish to
Right.
target a particular color.
Right.
So after 2 weeks, bass were required to strike their designated training target to receive that reward.
Okay.
Okay. And all of the tanks were successful in training the bass,
Every color.
every single color. Okay.
Interesting.
And so tanks were considered to be trained when all of the bass in a given tank struck at the pipette for 3 consecutive days. And
Okay.
they did this for, like I said, 70 days.
Right.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit to the first goal, which was to differentiate, to understand how bass see, it was more of a study into the biology or to the physical aspect of the bass. So they actually dissected bass to understand how their eyes worked.
Right.
All right.
Right.
And this is what they discovered. This might seem obvious, but they discovered that there was no differentiation between an Illinois strain bass and a Florida strain bass in how they see. So what that
In the
tells
structure of their eyes.
in the structure of their eyes,
Right.
in the structure of their
Right.
eyes, right? This is not talking about watercolor. This is just the structure of their eyes.
Right.
Okay. And what they essentially got to the bottom of is that bass have what is called dichromatic vision.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So in humans, we have trichromatic vision.
Okay.
So our eyes can see a spectrum of red colors, a spectrum of green colors, and a spectrum of blue colors. And all of those spectrums can overlap in different ways, which allow us to see the variation of colors that we do. Bass only have two of those cones.
Okay.
They only have red and green.
Right.
Bass do not have that blue cone. So that takes out a huge spectrum of what bass can and cannot see. All right. So that's what that was kind of the physical part and the physical goal of the study that they were able to determine. All right. So the question now becomes, okay, why do I care? Why do I care about whether or not they have these different cones? What I care about as an angler is what can they see and what can they not see.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So this is where things get really interesting, in my opinion.
Okay.
All right. So they ran 3 experiments. Okay. The first experiment was discerning the training targets from their alternatives in the presence of a chemical cue, which is their food, an olfactory cue.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Experiment 2 was the exact same minus the chemical cue. So you're still asking the fish to pursue a particular target, but you're not rewarding them with food and you're not giving scent to the color that you're wanting them to pursue. Right?
That's interesting. So, what would cause them to want to go to that color?
Exactly right. Exactly. Well, they've been trained for 70 days that if I go towards this color, I'm going to get food. Right. And it worked in every tank. Like they were able to train the fish successfully for doing that. Experiment 3 is even more interesting, in my opinion. It was, in the absence of scent, discerning color cues from achromatic stimuli. Now, what that means, an achromatic stimuli, is essentially just a gray card. Okay. Achromatic. There's no color to but it's gray. So what you can do is, like, if I took a shade of bright orange, right?
Yeah.
It you can study how much light reflects off of bright orange, right? There's a They can actually figure that, like, there's a numerical value to how much light reflects off of bright orange. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they can replicate that same reflection with a gray, like with a shade of gray, an achromatic card. Okay. Right. So you could have a gray card and an orange card, and the amount of light that is bouncing off of those are the same. In other words, for an animal that is, say, colorblind,
it will look
would look the exact same.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So let's go back to that first study. So the results of the first study, which is discerning 1 from 6 different colors with the presence of a chemical cue. All right. So when they had the chemical cue present, this is the success rates that the fish were able to differentiate between other colors. Okay. With scent.
Wait, so they were having to differentiate against other colors with only one color was in the tank with them?
No.
Or there's multiple different colors?
All 6 colors
were in the tank.
And
they had to pick
the right one. And by the way, every day they would reorganize the positioning of those cards in the tank.
Okay.
So
that's the well done method.
The fish are not trained like, hey, I'm going to go left or I'm going to get the second from the right. It's truly, I need to go after this color to get food for 70 days. And they did it. Okay. So with scent, the color red, they were able to successfully go towards it 81.5% of the time.
Seems pretty high.
Green, 72.8. Blue, 65. Black, 66. Yellow, 61. And white, 57. Okay?
Interesting. White is so far down there.
Okay. But here's where you get really interesting. Now let's take the scent out of it. Just visual cues alone. Right. Okay? Red went up 85.4%.
Wow.
Green stayed the same, 72.3%. Mm-hmm. Blue went from 65 to 48. Black actually went up So from 66 to 70.
That's good
Yellow,
information right
this is where it
there.
gets really interesting though. Okay. And by the way, when I say yellow, it's chartreuse.
Chartreuse. Okay.
So chartreuse went from 66 with scent to 45. And then white went from 57 with scent to 33. But here's where you get really interesting. Okay. So I'm going to read those again. And the first number I read is going to be with scent, and the second number I'm going to read is without scent.
Okay.
So red went from 81 to 85. Green went from 72 to 72. Blue went from 65 to 48. Black went from 66 to 70. Yellow went from 61 to 45. And white went from 57 to 33. Okay. But what's interesting is that when you see the significant decreases in success rates for colors like blue, yellow, and white, you wonder, well, what colors did they go after alternatively? Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay.
Forgot those other colors are in there.
Right. So a fish that was originally trained from blue to go to blue,
Mm-hmm.
and that was performing at a 65% success rate, that went down to 48, was confusing blue and black at almost a 50% rate.
Wow.
Blue and
Okay.
black were interchangeable. When the fish went from being trained to go to black without scent, it was now going to blue about 30% of the time. Okay. Even more so is the white and chartreuse.
Right.
When a fish was trained to go to chartreuse, it was only successfully doing it without scent 45% of the time. The other 55% of the time, it was going either to white or to blue.
See, I find that super interesting because you like just from previous knowledge before I've heard you talk about this study, is you hear white and chartreuse are the same to fish.
They are.
Is what I've use what you hear over industry standards. Is like you might as well put chartreuse on it just to brighten up the tails, not because they see the chartreuse. It's just a brighter chrome or a brighter hue.
Well, you're exactly
that you're
right.
adding to that
You're
worm.
exactly right.
I find that interesting that study shows the same.
Well, the last part of it is when a fish was trained to go to white, right? It went from with scent at 57% to 33. It was chasing white and chartreuse at almost equal rates, a third of the time.
Good to know.
Right? And so
Right.
what that tells me as an angler is, first of all, I don't care about having a yellow stripe going down my white crankbait. I don't care.
Right. You're going to see the
You're
same
going to see
thing.
the same thing. I don't care about having a white spinnerbait and a white with a chartreuse striped spinnerbait and a chartreuse spinnerbait. You need one.
Right.
They're
Right.
identical.
Yeah. You can
Okay.
limit your box.
You can limit your box.
Right. You can have just
Okay.
fewer things. I find that interesting though, also in the sense of like, you hear all the time, oh, don't put your lure in the water without painting the tail, chartreuse. Like, is that, partially some of that scent, that garlic scent that's on it?
Well, I'll get to that here in a second.
And is it just like the whiteness of it because it's such a dark water
I'll
body?
get to that in a second. So what's interesting, let me read some of the language of this study, okay? Talking specifically about white and chartreuse, okay?
Yeah.
Our visual detection model of bass vision indicated that dichromatic bass vision limits the perception of yellow coloration. In particular, chartreuse yellow should appear similar to white. This happens because chartreuse yellow equally stimulates both the green and red cone cells at familiar frequencies. Hence, there is no occupancy or opponency. It's a weird word for them to be using in this study, resulting from chartreuse yellow. In trials with olfactory cues with scent,
Yeah.
bass trained to chartreuse yellow and white could correctly identify their target colors. Yet even here, they often made mistakes and frequently chose the other. This pattern was amplified when the bass were tested in the absence of scent. Okay, so there's a couple things to learn there, right? The biggest and most glaring one to me, and this will be a completely separate episode that I think you and I should do, is how significant scent plays.
Right.
These fish went from a success rate of over almost 60% down to 30%. right? Or from 60% down to 45, or from 65 down to 48. And they were able to differentiate, well, differentiate colors that would seemingly be identical, like black and blue. Black and blue are
Right.
seemingly
Because they're
identical
following the scent.
because they're following the scent, right? Which,
Right.
I mean, that just tells me,
Right.
wow, that is crazy.
Right.
Now,
How much did they say anything in the study about how? Because they're putting food in the pipettes.
yeah,
Can the bass see the food in the pipette?
my understanding of it is that the food would be placed would be hidden behind the panel of color.
Okay.
And so the fish would have to, quote unquote, strike the panel, but in reality, they just had to
Nudge it
they had to
or
get close to it.
right.
Like there was a certain distance that if they got so close, they would consider
They
that to
counted
be a
it.
strike,
Okay.
right?
Okay,
They're
that
not
makes more
actually
sense.
swiping at
So
the.
it truly is scent and sight of color.
It,
They did that well then on that
exactly right.
method.
Exactly right. Now, what is also kind of the cherry on top of all this is the red and the green situation, right? So obviously, one of the big takeaways here is that bass are keenly capable of identifying red as it is perceived by humans and green as it is perceived by humans. Now, the third experiment, which I mentioned, confirms this.
Okay.
So even when bass were presented with 7 other non-chromatic, achromatic stimuli, aka gray shades,
Yeah.
they were still choosing red and green at almost a 50% success rate.
Okay. So it definitely has to have a play, like coloration wise. I mean, you think, obviously industry standards throw your green pumpkin.
Well,
There's definitely something to that.
there's a lot going on with this. Okay, so here's where I think that this matters to the average angler. Okay, you're never going to be able to convince me to abandon the concept of matching the hatch, right?
Right.
Because no matter how a bass views a shad or a gill or a craw compared to how humans see it, when you match or emulate that color, you're going to be replicating what the bass
See.
sees.
Yeah.
Okay,
What they're feeding on regularly.
exactly right.
Right.
Now, but where this does make a difference to me is that when I'm out on the water and I'm needing something, I'm needing to change, I'm wanting to try something different,
Right.
I'm not going to go from a black jig to a black and blue jig. I am not going to go from a white lure to white and chartreuse or from white to chartreuse. What
Right.
I'm going to do is I'm going to go from white to black, or I'm going to go from white to red,
Right.
or from red to green.
Right.
Or when I'm throwing a jig, instead of putting, I mean, think about how many guys you see on YouTube who do I like my jigs ugly, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't match the trailer to the jig.
Uh-huh.
I personally was like, ew, I like my shit to look the same.
Right.
I'm done with that. I'm done with that because it
Right.
shows me that bass can differentiate particular colors,
Right.
and that's important to them, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you something I did this summer that I had never done before. A lot of was take a very bright black and blue jig, like the blue is very bright on
Mhm.
it, and stick a green pumpkin trailer on it every time I went out.
Right.
Just to see, because I would always stick something dark on the back of that, and I had a lot of success this summer doing that. And just trying something new in the color variation.
Right.
That a lot of times people look down upon because it's not matching the color.
The other thing that this study tells me is that I'm going to be throwing red a lot more this year. I'm
Yeah.
going to be using. Think about. I need to buy another red marker, and what I mean.
True.
Why
True.
not put
True.
red on? Because you're telling me now that that is that is the color that they see the best. That
Right.
they can differentiate from everything. That it will light up like a Christmas tree. Why would I not use that in almost every situation?
Right. And did they look at any color variation of red at all, or is it just straight like a bright red?
So the experiment was just with the 6 paneled acrylic
Okay.
cards.
Okay.
However, I did watch some videos or read something somewhere that talked about how because fish can see the red spectrum, that other red hued colors will still pop. And Sam, think about this. This makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's
Yeah.
think of some of the most successful colors ever made in bass fishing.
Right.
Red shad, red bug, June bug, black and red flake,
Yeah.
California 420, watermelon red. Think about all the fire and chili cross, right? Think about morning dawn,
Plum.
plum, right?
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, just super, super interesting stuff. There's more to this as well.
Right.
Let me think where I was going next with this. Um,
I will say, one of the favorite drop shot, colors on Table Rock is your pink.
is your pink?
I mean, as pink as you can get it, that.
Oh, the other thing that I read, and I don't know if it was in this study or not, but obviously a big selection for coloration for me is going to be water clarity. Right?
Yes.
That's like that's how you choose when you
Right.
go out. Right.
Right.
So in the Midwest, we don't have. We actually have clearer lakes than a lot of places around the country compared to like say down south.
Yeah.
Okay,
Very,
like
very
Table
much
Rock,
so.
even Ozarks can be really clean. Truman tends to run a little dirtier, but
Yeah.
around here and up north, I mean, you're going to have pretty clear water,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You always hear, in murky water, you want to do either really dark or really bright, which I think is true.
Yeah.
But they said that even in high polluted water, in water that is densely filled with sediment, that your best color is going to be red because they can differentiate that better even in murkier water
Wow.
than they can from something bright or dark. Isn't that interesting?
That's so wild.
It's because in muddy water, their ability to differentiate red is still going to be better than it is from differentiating black or even white.
Yeah, but then you think about like just the sheer brightness of it and like the light
The
reflection
contrast,
contrast off of it,
totally agree.
is like, how does a white lure not look brighter than a red? But maybe the importance is not how bright it is. Maybe it's about just pure attraction,
What they can see,
you know?
and I think that I completely agree. And so
Yeah.
something that's interesting that a lot of these guys on YouTube did that I mentioned is uh, there are colorblind simulators online, right? We've all seen the dots with all the numbers in them. They test you,
Yeah.
right? Well, there are simulators online that you can get in and upload photos that you take. Now, one of the color blindness that humans actually have is called what is it? Triton, uh, Tritonopia. It's blue blind. It's like bass. You don't have the blue cone. So I went ahead and uploaded some images into it of different crankbaits in different colors, and sure as shit, they're spot on. I don't know if I can put this in the video or whatever, but like left is
Normal.
normal and right is not. And you can already see that, like, okay, let's take this bait right here, right? That's
Yeah.
bright chartreuse. When you come over here,
She's
that's
white.
just white, right? And what it also tells you,
Man, look at the reds.
look at the reds popping
Wow.
out bright.
Look the same.
What it also tells me is that all these little variations between all these brown craws and all these different chartreuses and chromes doesn't
It's
matter.
just shading at that point.
It's just tiny little shading. It doesn't really make a difference at all. Isn't that interesting?
That's very interesting.
Okay. So,
Wow.
yeah. So the other study that I looked at was, I think, less exciting, but still somewhat informative and kind of makes sense. All right. So this was a study that was done from up in Canada, the Department of Biology in Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, in 2015. And the title of their study was called "Does Lure Color Influence Per or Catch Per Unit Effort, Fish Capture Size, and Hooking Injury in Angled Largemouth Bass?" Okay,
Yeah.
so does color
Yeah.
affect
Size, how many,
size, and
how you
injury,
hook them.
right?
Yeah.
I don't, the hooking, long story short, there's no difference in the hooking thing. What they used in this study, granted, it was a very limited study. It was one lake in Canada. Okay, so very, very
Yeah.
limited.
Take what you want.
Take what you want, right?
Yeah.
They used 6 different Senkos.
Okay.
Okay, it was like like a dark, like a green pumpkin or a black, um, uh, a brown. Um, there was a bright like bubblegum and like orange color. There was white, and then like more natural colors in between. So it went from like darkest at black to like a more natural color to a bright color.
Okay.
All right. Um, So there was a correlation between color and size of bass. There was not a correlation between, really strongly, between the number of fish that they caught, but there was a very clear one with size. The brighter the bait, the larger the fish was.
The brighter the bait in terms of like green or red, they could see the color is
No,
brighter, or just
no,
like
it
white to black to
white to
you?
black.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
like the white
So more
Senko
like a chartreuse.
and the bubblegum pink slash orange worms caught bigger fish than a brown, black, or green worm. Okay.
Okay.
And so this is their hypothesis as to why this is. Okay. So when lure color was grouped into the dark, natural, and bright category, so that's 2 worm each category. Okay. There was a significant relationship detected between the color categories and the total length of captured fish. The bright lure color category caught fish that were significantly longer than the fish captured on the dark and natural colors. And this is their reasoning. Smaller bass in our lakes consume mostly microvertebrates and crawfish. Okay,
Ah,
small
I see
bugs
where
and
you're going with
crawfish.
this. Yeah.
Okay, right. Whereas larger bass focus primarily on golden shiners, bluegill, and shad. They
Yeah.
transition. The larger fish tend to transition into being completely what is it? Piscivatory, exclusively chasing after other fish. In our study, bright lure colors, orange and white, had a significant relationship in the total length of fish length. It is possible that, like bass in the Christian and Moore study, which is a different study in 2007 experiment, largemouth bass in the lake that they tested have a functional feeding groups structured by total length. The dark, black and blue, and wild, which was their like brown and red, lure color groups did not have a significant difference from one another in terms of total length of the fish caught. This could be because the functional feeding group of smaller bass, as
Mm-hmm.
suggested by this 2007 study, mostly consists of microinvertebrates and crawfish that often have a brown, red, or blue coloring. Okay?
Yeah, that's something interesting to think about because when you get into the realm of big swim baits and stuff like that, you find, bone. Like, why do people throw that bone, that bright
Uh,
white?
I know it.
It's that like there could be something truly to that, like the color and the size and
Bright,
yeah,
in your face
right,
colors.
right,
So all this study to say, and all this why this matters is bass can see colors, but they cannot differentiate between similar colors unless they're red or green. Essentially,
right,
red or green,
right,
you need to purposefully and intentionally have those be part of your arsenals. Okay,
right. And color variations of those because
sure,
they can tell
sure,
that.
they can tell shading differences,
Right.
but black and blue, I don't care.
Yeah,
White and chartreuse, I don't care.
right.
Now, you can use white and chartreuse as accent colors to like a black jig. Like if you had a black jig with a bright white trailer on it,
Yeah,
that's a lot of contrast. That's good. Something I've never done before. I've
yeah,
never done that,
yeah.
which now I'm certainly interested in doing, right? It just shows me that certain colors and contrast are incredibly important to fish.
Yeah, I think this is gonna definitely make me throw red more
Way more.
because you hear
Way
you
more.
hear throw red in the spring, and then red goes up.
And then red goes up.
Red never comes back out until next
I
spring.
totally agree. I
Like
don't know
why?
why.
Why is that a
I don't
thing?
know. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
like, what makes bass want to hit
Well,
red
okay,
so
hold
much more in
on.
the
Red,
spring?
it goes up in terms of moving baits, but think about summertime though. I mean, one of my favorite summertime
Yeah,
patterns is
you're
going to be
true to your
like a
red
red
worms.
shad, a
Yeah,
red worm,
yeah,
and I year after year after year after year, I would say that in that heat of the summer, a trick worm that is like a scuppernong or scupperong, however you pronounce that, a red shad, a black and red flake are pretty consistent. And talk about Table Rock, talk about Ozarks, that pink worm,
yeah.
which
Golly,
has red flake in it,
yeah,
is always going to be successful. It
yeah.
always
That
is,
morning nod red flake on Table Rock, you could throw a drop shot anywhere in that lake, and if you stuck onto that long enough, you will catch a fish.
for sure.
And
It
yeah,
explains a
that
lot.
talks a lot because I have so many other drop shot worms just sitting in the bottom of the boat, that you will try every once in a while.
Okay, I was making sure your thing's on.
That you're just like, God, I'm not gonna bite. I'm not gonna bite. I'm just gonna go back to pink, and then eventually, pink prevails. Whether that's a confidence thing, whether it's
Right.
being in the right spot, whether
Right.
it's putting it in front of the fish.
Right.
I can confidently say I'm putting some of those other colors in front of fish, and they're not eating it
Right.
because of live scope,
Right.
because of our
Right.
electronics. But there's definitely something to say about pink and red.
For sure. I mean,
Uh,
bubble gum,
right.
all that kind of stuff. The other thing I think about is how many times have you and I been out on the water and we're throwing like a Kitech or an A rig or a fluke or scoping or whatever, jig and minnow, and
Yeah.
we're not getting bit. And I go, I'm going to put a little red on the chin. And that does it. How many times have I done that? How
Yeah.
many times have we done that
Yeah.
with orange, right? Which is a
Yeah.
different hue of that red.
Right.
It
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It makes a really big difference. And I can tell you right now, I'm not going to be, I'm going to just, that's how I'm going to be out of the box is first cast, I'm having red on it. Like,
Yeah.
why would you not?
Yeah.
And I just think about like tournament fishing, like how many times have you and I been out and, in a tournament and it's like, okay, Sam's got a bite on this or Corbin's got a bite on this. And like the other is trying to set ourselves apart, right?
Right.
Or
Trying to find a different bite.
find a different bite or perfect or polish an already what could be a
Yeah.
bite,
What's working?
right?
Right.
I can tell you right now,
Yeah.
if we're like, hey, there's a jig bite, okay,
Right.
and you're throwing a black jig, I'm picking up a red jig.
Yeah.
I'm picking up a red jig.
Yeah. There's some.
I'm putting a red trailer
Yeah.
on it,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I've had.
Why not?
Why
Why
not?
not try it?
Why not try it?
Yeah.
Last thing I'll tell you that, and then I'll turn it over to you. There was a day that I was out with Judge
Mm-hmm.
fishing, and it was, I think it was summertime, and we had just gotten a lot of rain, and the water was super, super murky.
Yeah.
And he picked up a bright, bright red chatterbait, and I thought, this is
What is he doing?
what is he doing? I don't know. I don't understand. And I told him that. I was like, I don't know why you're doing that. Like that seems like not the color. Like I was like, I want to throw something more dark, right?
Right.
He caught 5 fish to my one.
Interesting.
On and that to me, I
That's
mean,
very.
that's one time.
Yeah.
It's one time, but
Right.
that just tells me that fish are capable of seeing that red in
Right.
muddy, muddy water. I mean, few inches of visibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, obviously, the chatterbait vibration,
There's a lot of other
plays
things
into that,
playing
which
into
I think
that, but
that should be another episode. It's like lateral line feeling,
right.
hearing, all that kind of stuff. But
Right.
okay, so that was what I
That's
figured out.
insightful.
It's super insightful, and I'm
That's
still
really,
super excited
really
about
cool. That study really dove in that far into everything. I think I had a few questions on here about color that I was going to ask you if you went over anything. What did they say anything about chrome
it.
when there's a lack of sun or anything?
I did not look into that, but I did. One of the guys doing who analyzed this same study on YouTube that I watched, he kind of added like a seventh color to the mix, which he called flash.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how that plays. I think he's right in classifying that as its own, category,
Uh-huh.
and it certainly works. I mean, obviously, but
Right.
where that falls in the mix of target separation and target identification, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I couldn't tell you.
Because I was reading through, some of my stuff, and I found, that they were saying that chrome turns completely gray when you have a lack of sunshine. And you think,
Sure.
Because of jerkbait fishing a lot around, the Midwest where we're at, that you pick up that matte color,
I love that matte color.
instead of the chrome when
Yeah.
the sun goes away.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting that it's just gray. And gray is not a color that, the fish are
Care about necessarily.
interested
It
in.
might match the
From what we
hatch.
yeah.
It might match the
That's
hatch,
about
but
it.
other than that, yeah.
Right. It's not going to make a difference, because of your chrome. Your chrome is not going to make a difference when the
Right.
sun is
Right.
not out.
Right. Okay. I
know?
mean, that makes total
Yeah.
sense.
What did they say about suspended algae and zooplankton and stuff like that? Did they say anything about that for coloration?
Not really. I mean, I
Okay.
read some interesting stuff about bluegill and about
Mhm.
how fish, their eyes change over time and their ability to identify stuff like that, plankton, but not really that is what I would consider to be impactful for us.
Because I read this article, and it was on Toledo Bend, where I'm going to be heading here, in March, to go fish for a week. And it was saying when the zooplankton and algae get really suspended, in those southern lakes
Mhm.
that the green and yellow colors pop even more for the fish. I don't necessarily know how that would work. I don't necessarily believe the yellow as much after what you just, have brought to us,
Yeah.
but there's there could be something to that, having the more green in the water makes the hue of the water change. You always hear like the Lake Fork green,
Right. 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 Right.
like
Right.
watercolor. Like I just there might be something to
Well,
that. I
there's no
wonder.
doubt in my mind that watercolor does impact all of this.
Right.
How necessarily, I still don't know, other than just like what my brain would assume to be true. If the water's clear, they're going
You're
to
gonna
have an easier time
see
identifying
color.
particular colors or
Right.
differentiating between
Right.
different colors.
Right.
Some of the research tends to disagree with that when it relates to reds and greens, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, so
All right. So I basically looked into sight distance for bass and how water clarity can play into this a little more. I found it very interesting that there is a large lack of research in this area. I found, I think, two decent research articles that talked about this, but one of them was from 1998, and the other one was from a recent biologist who studies down in the Southern Lakes, who's part of the Texas Wildlife Fishing organization down there. So there wasn't a whole lot to be said on this, but I did find a few interesting things I think can help, just any fisherman, that's watching this to know like when to throw certain things, how shallow to stay,
sure,
certain water depths, certain
sure,
water clarities, and things like that.
sure.
So, um, estimated depths and sight for largemouth bass to be able to see is most people can want to agree that 50 feet is about as far as they can see in a fairly clear.
That's pretty
Um,
far.
yeah, exactly what I was thinking. Like that's that's pretty far. If you think throwing a
How
live
many boat
scope,
lengths? Well, think about boat lengths.
right? That's like two boat lengths, two and a half boat lengths.
Yeah,
For most people's boat. Um, but yeah, and it said that bass are known to be can or have been found in about 140 feet. So they have to assume that bass can feed down in that
sure.
area, right? Now that has to be the clearest water of all time, right?
You'd
For them
think.
to be able to be
You'd
down
think.
there. So in this study I read, it looked at how fish fed in certain water clarities, and I don't think that this study did a great job of um, uh, separating these bass in their water clarities. They did it all in a similar like area of lake, but one area of the lake was more clear than another area of the lake. So how much of sediments moving, how clear is the water like truly when they're doing their studies? It was kind of I think hard to say like this study was done super well.
This isn't the one I sent you, is it?
I can't remember if this is the one you sent me
I
or
don't think
not.
it was, because the one I think I sent you was they were in tanks.
Okay.
Anyways,
Okay. But the depth of water column available for feeding in low clarity water, so basically 2 foot or less, was 67% and 75% less than at a moderate fit of clarity of 6.5 feet is what they called moderate. So significantly less ability to feed in water clarities when you're at a 2 foot of visibility versus 6 foot of visibility versus 13 foot of visibility.
sure.
The difference between 6.5 foot and 13 foot was negligible. They couldn't really find a difference
Oh,
in
interesting.
there. But from going from 2 foot of clarity to 6 foot of clarity, there's a massive drop off in the ability to feed at those lower depths.
Okay, so what you're telling me, and I think this might be reflected in the study that I sent you, which you might
Yeah,
be talking about this next, is
right.
the way I'm understanding this is if the water clarity is murky to a certain point, you are completely shooting yourself in the foot to be fishing any deeper than, say, 5 feet.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And I think
So you need to
that's
be fishing in dirty water. You need to be spending the majority of your time in shallow water.
shallow, right? And
That's interesting.
that's become a big shift. I feel like in the fishing industry is like, oh, let's get deeper.
Well, it's all forward
Let's
facing sonar.
try to get where these fish haven't been caught before,
Totally.
right? But I think there's a big red stop sign here that says, if you're fishing Truman Lake, and you're in the spring and those rivers are flowing in there and you can't see past 2 foot of water, you better not leave,
That
10
shallower
foot
water.
or less, because you're going to be hunting for bass that can't see your stuff.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that forward facing sonar has completely flipped that kind of on its head a little bit because
Because you
now
can place it where
you
they're
can
at.
place it in a certain proximity.
Right. Right. I
But
understand that.
there's no doubt in my mind that fish probably, I mean, you always hear that,
Right.
well, when the water gets dirty, fish are wanting to hang out by a piece of structure or by the bottom to give them some type of spatial,
Yeah.
or perceptive, something to base off
Right.
of. Um, and sounds like the study completely supports that.
Yeah. And I will say that the biologist that I was reading his paper on, he said that bass have their best vision is at about 10 inches and less.
Wow.
So you think like a foot in front of them is like their best eyesight. Like you got to have that bait kind of close to them
Shoot.
to give them a chance. If they're not using scent in their lateral lines, if you're
If it's just
just
visual
their
cues.
visual cues, right? Which this is where the question becomes, and we can look at this in a later study, is in these murkier bodies of water, how much more do they rely on those other
I'm sure
things?
it's elevated. I'm
Right.
sure it is, but still.
So I will say this, talking about light and the clarity that brings into the water column, there was a study done that said that bass, for like changing conditions of like going from sunlight to clouds and how that's
Uh-huh.
affecting
Uh-huh.
like the bass ability to see in the water,
Uh-huh.
is that their pupils adjust very slowly to changing light conditions.
Oh, how interesting.
So talking like 20 minutes or longer for a bass, to go from like it's bright outside to a cloud comes in front and it gets like much darker, like as you can see on the
Yeah, yeah,
water,
yeah, yeah.
or like going from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. the sun's going
Yeah.
down type of thing. And they said that that even though it takes them 20 minutes or so to like change their pupils over completely, and they're constantly changing as the light gets darker and darker throughout the night, that the bait fish that they're usually feeding on take twice as long to change their pupils.
Okay.
So that's why they think that feeding times for bass in those early morning and late night hours, like before like it's super dark, is why they feed so well,
Oh, is
because their
because their
vision
prey.
and their prey cannot see at the same level that they
Yes, I
can.
saw something, and this might actually be. We might have both read this. Yes, that bass understand that they have superior knowledge at those critical changing points
Right.
to where they can get away with a little bit more
Yeah.
and that their prey can't understand, which is crazy. And you know what that also tells me? And one of my resolutions this year is just to really spend a lot of time or more time with dock fishing. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It makes a
that's
lot of
true.
sense why and you got ambush points hanging around. I mean, obviously
Right.
there are lots of different reasons why a dock would be an ambush point, but that's in my mind would be a huge one.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
Very much
interesting
so. But I found that pretty cool, and like the reasoning why we like to fish at night,
is
and fish in the
because they
morning.
have the superior vision. It's like
Right.
well,
Right.
they're animals of prey,
Right.
other predators out in
Allows them to feed successfully. Right, and they become more aggressive in that time
right.
because they're
Well,
able
they have
to.
bigger eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, think about like
Yeah.
animals like like a leopard, or think about a lion or something, or even like an owl,
Yeah.
right? Really big eyes to allow that light to come in. How interesting. Yeah.
I did read something too that the size of the bass makes a huge difference in their ability to see and their eyesight.
Oh, like the
Be,
age.
be age and but particularly size, because their eyes are larger on larger bass. So that's why you may be able to trick or get a younger bass to
It's
feed,
because they can't see as
because they
well.
cannot see as well. Like they purely cannot see as well. So
Wow, how interesting. That
right.
mixed with, I mean, other factors, but
Yeah, but that's
wow,
just one of the many that play into
they can
that.
see it better. So
Right,
that's why you got to be so
right.
wow.
One thing I found that I feel like could help a lot of fishermen and like determining, how deep they should be fishing is lowering a white object, a spinnerbait or a jig, until it disappears to try to get your depth of water clarity, and
Well,
then
yeah, or red.
measure that. Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
is like easiest for you to see,
Yeah.
likely, and then measure that distance and multiply it by 4 to estimate the depth at which a bass can effectively use its vision.
No way.
Yeah.
By 4.
Yeah. So if you have about
Wow.
3 foot of clarity,
Yeah.
not very
Yeah, they got
much,
12 feet.
you got 12 feet, and you should probably stay 12 feet or less, unless you're trying to live scope drop it directly on a fish's head.
Oh, so you're saying that is the depth that you should aim to be fishing in or shallower?
In or shallower, because that's their effective vision in that depth. Like that's where they are still effective, right? So when it starts getting murked up, here comes spring. All this runoff from snow and
do
rain
your little
and
test
everything.
and say, hey, we're going
Just
to run
drop it
this a
down.
little
Say,
shallower.
hey, I think I can see it's about 3 feet down. Say we're going to stay in 12 feet or less.
Wow.
I think that's good information, because I think that can eliminate a lot of water.
Well, it eliminates a lot of water. It also tells you, especially in like a tournament situation of
Right.
like when you're trying to piece together, well, what should we do or what could we do? You now start to think, well, we've got 2 feet of visibility, so we've really got 8.
Right. You set parameters.
Right. And so now you're going, well, okay, I'm going to work with 8 feet of water or less, or I'm going to turn on the screen and go find something cruising.
You're just trying to find a solo. But you're not trying to put yourself in the majority of feeding fish.
Correct. Right. And I think that the presence of forward-facing sonar, which we use, in a way, supersedes some of this research, because you're
yeah
in a way
there's always caveats to everything, right? Sure. But this is for the majority. I agree. Like, most fish are going to fall into this category. There's obviously the outliers. Right? I don't know if I had a whole lot more on that, just because there wasn't a whole lot to be saying. I did, notice that most of the studies I read, talked about bass having binocular vision only when they're seeing in front of them. Because of so binocular vision, we have binocular vision, right? Our eyes are at the same time everywhere we look, right? They piece it together, right? And that's how we see the world. Right. They have binocular vision only when they look forward.
Well, sure, that would make sense because their
eyes, right? Because on upside their head. But that also plays into why having the bait directly in front of them on forward-facing sonar makes such a difference.
Because they can see it so much better.
So much better. And that's why a lot of times when bass strike from it off to a side, they miss much more because they go to monocular vision.
Monocular vision. That makes total sense.
I thought that was pretty cool insight, to, putting a lure out there why you throw a lure out in front of a bass that's swimming, on your
certain direction
on live scope or perspective, and you're like, why didn't that bass hit? But the next time you throw it, you actually get it in front of them and they eat it immediately.
My God. I mean, think about how many times that you and I have chased a particular fish and been like, we both together have said, I don't think he's got a good look at it.
Right.
Whereas on the screen, you can tell, like, well, I'm 2 inches from this thing, but you can still tell, like, he doesn't have a look of it.
Right.
He's not getting a good look of it.
Right. And that's how live scope is going to play into so much research here in the future of on the water research.
Oh, totally.
But as of now, this is what we have available. I would say the last thing that I kind of read about was the mosaic pattern in their eyes and how they have double cone cells.
That's
and a lot of that was into play with your topic, but that double cone cell allows them to see polarized light, which being able to see polarized light,
no glare,
allows them to hunt in turbid waters. So I think with that being said, is like, don't be afraid of the wind.
Obviously,
find the wind, right? Because you think find the wind because all the bait's getting pushed over there, or the plankton, whatever, and the bait's following that, and the bass are following that, right? It just goes to show, like studies have shown, that bass being able to see polarized light allows them to break up, the wavy water, allows them to be able to hunt well in those waters.
Yeah.
So,
how interesting.
good information.
I want to see if I can't
That's out there, but there definitely needs to be a lot more.
find, maybe before we wrap up, I want to find this article that I sent you. Um, is this the one that you
Yeah,
read?
yeah,
Okay, all
yeah,
right. So I guess for context, this is an article in the Journal of Fishing Biology from April of 2005 that was written by Thomas McHaon at the Montana State University, and the title of it is "Foraging Success of Largemouth Bass at Different Light Intensities: Implications for Time and Depth of Feeding."
yeah.
Very interesting article, and yeah, the other thing I think that was in here that I wanted to talk about that you did not mention, is
Daylight,
the light,
starlight.
and
Yeah,
moonlight,
yeah.
about how drastically fish hunting is impacted by
The ability of
the
the light.
brightness.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
um, the I'll spare all of the details, but essentially what it is saying is that, um, in dark conditions, their feeding frequency and the depth at which they feed decreases significantly,
Right.
which makes sense.
Because they can't see.
Which
Right.
totally makes sense, and
Is
also
the
that also makes me want us to study the lateral line situation, because I mean, you and I know just as good as anybody that nighttime fishing can be great,
right. Yeah.
incredibly effective.
Yeah. That's what they do on Lake Fork in the summer.
Yeah,
It's so hot out there in
yeah,
Texas.
yeah.
So I mean, there's got to be some play to it. I mean, moonlight. In that study, you can read. The moon fish still feed well in moonlight. It's when it gets to starlight, is what they said. When like pure moonlight is
It's just
gone,
almost nothing.
that they almost like can't feed anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it tells you that, if you're fishing at nighttime, if you're going to go night fishing, it's better to either have some type of artificial light around you by way of, green
Green.
lights or dock lights or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're going out in pitch black, good
Yeah.
luck.
Make sure the moon's
Make
out.
sure the moon's out.
Yeah.
The last thing I guess I'll say, and then we can wrap this up. I know I just said that, is people might be wondering about light and UV penetration into water and how that might affect lure color. I'm kind of going back to the color situation.
Okay.
Okay. So, if you're a scuba diver, if I guess anybody of our three people who might watch this, scuba dive, you know that UV light cannot penetrate water, um, cannot penetrate water in some respects. And so certain colors at certain depths are eliminated. The first being red. So when you scuba dive and you go down to certain depths, a piece of coral or a fish that might normally appear to you red will appear to you as brown, right? And
Okay.
and as you get deeper and deeper, certain colors begin to disappear. All right. I don't know exactly. It'd be an easy Google search to figure out in what order they disappear, but red is the first and blue is the last. Now we now know that it doesn't really matter that blue.
Right.
All this to say is that being the case does not eliminate anything that we said about fish targeting red. I watched a YouTube video of a guy who was worried about this exact problem, and he submerged fishing lures from red, chartreuse, white, blue, green, purple, name all of them, and he dropped it down in a lake that I would consider to be, well, multiple different lakes that was from clear to stained to murky, and he dropped them down to like 80 feet in all of these
That's far enough.
lakes.
Yeah.
You could see everything well.
Okay.
Like, I don't
Yeah.
think that really
That's good
makes a
information.
huge difference.
Right.
But for anybody wondering if red, if you want to get away from red because if you're fishing at a certain depth, I would say no.
Okay.
I would tend to say no.
Yeah.
So, all
Very
right. Well,
good.
that's the first thing on sight.
Yeah.
I think scent should probably be next. Scent would be an interesting one.
There's a lot of scent out there. I think it'd be cool to see, what is worth a purchase, if we would be able to figure that out or
Well,
not.
I can tell you what,
Yeah.
that this study absolutely confirms that it is worth a purchase
Yeah.
of scent.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. definitely,
Definitely.
definitely, scent makes a difference. But yeah, I'll definitely be adding some red to my box.
Oh my God. I mean,
Yeah,
red jigs. I want red trailers. I mean, a red marker.
yeah,
We make soft plastics. I don't have any red glitter. I'm going to get some red glitter. I'm going to get some red dye,
yeah. That'll
like
work.
throwing watermelon red more, it makes sense. I mean, it just makes sense why red,
That
that
red
red
speckle. Yeah,
works. But
yeah.
all right.
All right. Peace out.
Thanks for watching.